Manning. I'm the account manager at AWS working with augmented intelligence. I want to thank everyone for coming today. Thank you for coming to the Artificial Intelligence in Health and Human Services for Machine Learning and Natural Language Processing for Better Decision Making. Today we have two presenters, Joe Pringle, who's a business development leader of AI and ML at AWS, followed by Jim Lindstrom from Augintel, who's the VP of Product and Engineering. So with that, I'll go ahead and kick it over to Joe. And then if anyone has any questions, feel free to just enter them in the chat. And I'll go ahead and make sure Joe and Jim are aware so they can go ahead and answer your questions. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Patrick, and thanks everybody for joining. So again, my name is Joe Pringle, and I'm part of our AI machine learning team that focuses on the public policy space. And I work with our government end customers and our partners that work in the government space. And really, my role is to help focus on like how do we maximize the impact of AI and use it to solve problems and ultimately help people's lives and also do it in a responsible way. And so so very much looking forward to this conversation. What I thought I would do is just kind of set the table a little bit with some commentary of kind of what are we seeing out there and some trends and insights. And then I'm going to pass it over to Jim and have him share a bit about what the Augintel team is doing. So, and then I would encourage, fire away in the chat with some questions and we can make this conversational. So I suspect probably everybody on this call is sort of in the same boat where we're seeing all this stuff in the news these days about AI. It's sort of hard to avoid the topic actually. And it's been not a new topic, but all of a sudden the last year it just exploded in terms of the amount of attention to it. And it's interesting, like if you go out and you do a search for AI or AI in health and human services or AI in health or health policy, you get all these like different opinions, and there's this divergence of opinions. Like there's on one side you have all this ideas around how we can use AI to make healthcare and health policy and health and human services work better. All these opportunities we can see to like help someone do their job better, help outcomes, or help a beneficiary in different ways. So there's this huge like positive upside I think we're all seeing. And then on the other side, we're hearing all these other kind of perspectives around what could go wrong. What are the risks and limitations and threats to jobs or bias and fairness and types of challenges. And the reality is there's sort of truth to both sides. There's this tremendous potential that we're all seeing, and there's these big challenges we need to solve to use AI properly, especially, as we think about high stakes use cases where we're really making important decisions or intervening or acting in a way that just has such an important impact on people's lives. So what's behind all this? This is kind of a wonky looking slide, but I think there's like a really important trend to understand of like what's driving all a lot of the activity around speech and language in particular. Like we've had machine learning that we can use to understand human language for a while, and we've there's been this traditional approach to machine learning where you basically need to build a net new machine learning model to do different tasks. Maybe we're trying to understand a conversation, or we're trying to classify some unstructured text or some documents. And often, several years ago, you would need to find a team and a bunch of data and train a model and deploy and manage that model. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time and effort. And so that raised a bar pretty high to being able to do these kinds of speech and language things. One big shift that's been happening that we're seeing is like the rise of what are called foundation models. These are models where we can do these same tests, but maybe we use the same starting point. And instead of having to build the model from scratch, we can tune a model to do these different things. And so that's, to me, it's sort of creating two it's causing two things. One is it's lowering the bar to be able to solve a certain problem. And a lot of the things we're going to be talking about today are hard problems. These are not easy kind of out of the box types of problems. And so the toolbox for doing these things has gotten faster and easier, and it doesn't take as much effort to build that model. So so those are some ways that I think the AI space has been changing. One thing that I think is important is just starting with like business problems. Like it's easy to get all wrapped up in the tools and the technology and how cool they are, but at the end of the day, it's a tool, or it's rather a set of tools that we can use. And this is a little bit bigger perspective, not just speech and language, but like these are the kinds of things we can use machine learning to help us do. It can detect events, so we can spot a problem and be aware of it. We can forecast things based on historical data. We can process documents. We can take some information and maybe make it easier for a human to see the important parts and make a decision. We can understand conversations. We can provide self-service. So there's kind of these patterns we're seeing in the government space of like, where might we use these tools? But at the end of the day, it sort of comes down to like, where can we save someone some time and help free them up where they're spending less time on less important tasks and more time on more important tasks? How can we help them make better decisions? In almost all the things I work on, we're not really making decisions. We're making decisions easier, and we're helping the human kind of, again, avoid all the repetitive low value work so they can focus on what humans are good at, which is the nuanced judgment decision making that we need in so many cases. There's this important aspect of kind of what's happened over the past year, though. There's this article I like. This is from this it's the guy that founded Netscape, Mark Andreessen, and he's got a pretty good track record on predicting trends in the tech space. And one thing that he's really bullish on, in particular for health and the health space, is like reducing complexity. Like a lot of those of us on the tech side, for a lot of times we increase complexity. We come up with new tools that are powerful, but they're also complicated. And we've put a lot of burden on practitioners out there, caseworkers, clinicians, people in administrative types of roles, where we put a high burden on them to use technology to get their jobs done. But now there's, with the latest kind of advances of what's out there, we have a potential to really like make technology easier to use. And so that's a bit of a game changer. So he's super bullish on not just healthcare, but health and human services more broadly. So there's all this upside. There's all this ways we can use these tools to make a difference. But one of the things we spend a lot of time on and we're working on is really like, how do we put the right guardrails around AI and machine learning so that it can be used for high stakes use cases, where it's one thing to make a mistake if you're sort of writing a product blurb on an e-commerce website for a pair of tennis shoes, but it's another if we're in like a health and human services context. So accuracy is really important. There's challenges around bias and privacy, data privacy, security, and so to me, there's this big difference between like, what are things we can sort of demo and prototype, and what does it really take to do this stuff for real? And there's kind of these pillars of like, if we're going to actually use these tools in production for high stakes use case, we need to consider these themes. And I think, as this part of the conversation is really taking off, I think everyone's realizing like AI is transforming what we do, and it's going to continue to do so. We need to put a better job putting these guardrails around it so we're using it the right way. And I think we see a lot of kind of new companies that are coming out with new approaches and new solutions, and but there's a few out there that are actually doing this, and they have kind of the track record and the experience of like, how do we actually take these amazing capabilities but apply them in a way that takes into account these types of of considerations. And I would put Augintel on that short list, where they just and there's another aspect of what we do where we're trying to build like the building blocks, the Lego blocks that can then be put together to solve real world problems and provide tools that busy non-technical people can use. And I think there's an element of what Augintel has done too that's, to me, just kind of an exciting example of that. So that's my commentary. I want to hand it over to Jim and let him share some more about what Augintel is up to.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe, for that great overview, good introduction. Let me put my slides up and I'll carry the torch for the next part of our webinar. Here we go. So I'm going to pick up from here. My name's Jim Lindstrom. Patrick at the beginning gave my title here. I work at Augintel. I head up our product and engineering teams. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our company today. Augintel. Augintel is a machine learning company. We're focused on social services and healthcare and on building products that help you put your narrative data to even better use. I've got a few of our clients listed out here. We work with a smattering of state and county child welfare agencies around the country, as well as some behavioral health clients and some nonprofits as well. The problem that we're focused on is putting to use all the narrative data that the type of clients I just mentioned have. A lot of these clients are a couple decades now into their transition to digital, which means they might have 20 or even 30 years of data to train machine learning on to build better products from. And that's what we're focused on. When we talk to people in this space and understand the type of data they have, every time we have that conversation, people agree the narrative data that they have is the most, the biggest chunk of the data they have, but also the richest source that really tells the story of the patients, the clients, the families that these types of agencies are working with. The problem in our view is there just aren't good tools today to help people work with and make use of that data, to understand it, to search it, to summarize it, to leverage it, to oversee the work of an agency. Those tools just don't exist. A lot of those tools do exist for the little orange sliver of our pie here. You can think about, the tools you already have built into your primary workhorse system, other, tools like Power BI and Tableau along the side. Those kinds of tools, though, just don't exist in narrative data, and that's what our company is focused on providing. When we talk with people in this space, I think we hear a lot of things that present as different manifestations of that problem. And we've got a few of those quotes here. We often talk with people who are called in after some bad outcome has happened, and a review of the records will happen, and someone will say, there were red flags here, or there were dots that could have been connected. If only I'd noticed that before this happened. A lot of our clients are also struggling with staffing. In the last couple of years, that's gotten even worse. We hear people constantly saying, I have a dozen, maybe more cases. That's probably thousands of pages of potential documentation I could read through if I'm, just joining and getting my caseload assigned to me, or if I'm filling in for someone. I'm just underwater. I don't have the ability to read all that. When we talk to folks in quality improvement roles or quality assurance roles, we hear them talk about how small a subset of data they're actually able to kind of manually review and then try to extrapolate agency performance about. They may sample, one or a dozen or a couple dozen cases monthly or yearly, and then from that they're tasked with understanding, broadly how the whole agency is doing. The last thing on my slide here is people often tell us, when you look at a case through the lens of just the structured data, you may see a very different story than if you actually read the documentation that's been written by caseworkers or clinicians. Even for areas where the structured data theoretically has coverage, we often find that there's a very different story told by the notes themselves. It may be more up to date, it may be more accurate, it may be richer. And again, those are all kind of different formulations of the same problem I just described on the previous slide. So our approach to putting a dent in that problem is to leverage two areas of technology that Joe just described in his excellent overview, and that is natural language processing and machine learning. We're at kind of the intersection of these two different things, but they are different. Natural language processing is really a collection of different ways to help computers understand language, to understand, case notes that you may have, patient notes, plans, assessments. And then machine learning is an approach to having machines kind of learn, understand ways of understanding that text on their own. So this is a newer, different approach versus how natural language processing happened in the 90s and earlier, where there were lots of hand rules created, lots of dictionaries of terms created. That can work, but it's very brittle and hard to scale up. So what we're doing is applying a machine learning flavor of natural language processing to all the narrative that I just described. This slide, I think, was on our opening as well, and kind of gives you a visual image for what's happening. We're taking data from, in the child welfare space specifically, a SACWIS or a CWIS or potentially other systems as well, plans, assessments, notes, all of that kind of mess of text, feeding that through our natural language processing engine. And then that powers a whole bunch of interesting features that I'm going to show you in just a couple of minutes. Ways of searching through that information, ways of getting alerted when patterns appear in that information, just better ways of harnessing all of the richness that's in that text. We, as Joe indicated, are using some of the building blocks that AWS offers. I think at this point, we've trained our system on over 100 million case notes from around the country. I'll show you, pardon me, I'll show you in just a moment what that looks like. There's two sides to the product that I'm going to show you. They're both leveraging the same underlying technology, but kind of at different zoom levels, if you will. So the first part of our product is going to be looking at individual cases. And here we're really targeting features for frontline staff, for supervisors, for people with, a case or a caseload that they're focused on. The second part of the product that I'll show you kind of zooms out a couple levels and is really focused on providing functionality to managers, to people overseeing a whole unit, county, the whole state, folks in again, some kind of managerial role, or maybe in some kind of support role that spans, quite a bit of geography. That could be a quality improvement role or something like that. Let me actually just jump into the product now, and I'll show you what that looks like. Bear with me for one moment while I switch screens. Pop this up. And here we go. Okay, so I'm logged into now our production system. This is what we have clients up and running on today. I'm just logged into a demo account. So this is all fake data for the purposes of doing a demonstration. Let me say a couple things just to set the stage for what I'm going to show you. One is that the system I'm going to present to you here, we typically launch alongside, in the context of child welfare specifically, alongside a SACWIS or a CWIS system. Staff don't have to document any differently. We're not asking for any double documentation. We would connect to a client's system or systems where they're currently managing cases and just pull out the information we need. That gets sent over to AWS's cloud and fed into our kind of ingestion pipeline. And then that powers the product that we're looking at now. So this can kind of accept cases just as you're managing them now with whatever range of technology you might be on. We have clients on, 35-year-old mainframe systems. We have clients on shiny new, just being built systems and everything in between. The other thing I'll say is that I'm going to demo you a very fully standalone version of it. This is in my web browser. There's no hooks and links out to other pieces of technology. That's easy to demo. With real clients, we typically work very hard to make this feel like part of their technology ecosystem, as opposed to something just bolted on. There are a lot of ways we can integrate with your SSO to make sure there's not another password to remember. We can embed pieces of this UI or the underlying data back into existing systems you may have or new systems you're now building out. But again, for demo purposes, I'll just show you the fully standalone version of this. Good. I think that's the preliminaries. I'm going to spend about 10 minutes doing this, and then I have maybe 5 or 10 minutes more slides after that. So there's ample time in here for questions. If you have some, feel free to shoot them into the chat, and Patrick can raise them, or just hold them to the end, and we should have plenty of time after we get back after that journey I just described. Let me go ahead and get started here, though. I told you there were two parts of this product. We're looking now at the cases side of the product. So I'm logged in as a frontline user. You can see I have 12 cases assigned to me here. Each one of them is represented as a row. I'm going to click into this Dobson family, and we'll start there, and I'll kind of show you what a case looks like in our system. So for this case, we have pulled in 131. I'm just going to say notes for shorthand, but if you remember that pie chart we had, this could be anywhere that text lives in your system, pieces of intake forms, parts of plans or assessments. The bulk of the data we typically get, though, is from some sort of case note or case contact or something along those lines. So in this case, we've pulled in 130 of those. We have cases in our system where there are more than 10,000 notes. So this is by no means a long one, but I think this is typical of a case that maybe has been open for, as you can see on the left here, a year, 18 months, something in that time range. What we're doing here is taking in each of those notes just kind of in their full raw form, and then feeding them through our system. And then what you see here is just a small amount of the information we're extracting out of those notes and tagging there. You can see some things highlighted in red and green. Those are either risk factors or protective factors for the current clinical domain we're talking about, which is child welfare. We have other clients using this in behavioral health, where perhaps a different set of risk and protective factors would be relevant, but these are all relevant to child welfare. And then you're also seeing just general social determinants here listed as well. So those, again, would be in red or green, depending on the nature of them. Those are not tagged in any way in the source system. Our AI is trained to find those in your notes and just draw attention to them. It's been trained on actual child welfare notes, and so it's very well aware of grammar, fluidity, of spelling mistakes, of old systems where maybe the notes are in all caps. We're not asking workers to write perfect notes. We're just saying write them as they are, and our machines will interpret those correctly. The other thing you're seeing highlighted here are the names of people mentioned in bold. So if I click on Mr. Patterson, for instance, you can see our AI has said, that's a name. So are Henry Patterson, Mr. Henry Patterson, Henry. We think that's all the same person. He seems to be the dad in this case. He's listed in one of these notes as being 28 years old. So here, what we're really trying to do is just highlight the most important bits in these notes and make sure people can see those, that they jump out, and help them just piece together who are all the folks in this case. Once we do that across the whole span of this case, that lets us start to power a lot of really interesting ways to let people better understand this case. One of the most common ways in which we help people understand this case is through search. We think we're offering right now the only kind of natural language search product specifically tuned for child welfare. A lot of the CWSs and SACWSs we see maybe have a basic kind of exact keyword search, or maybe they have some fuzziness built in, but it's probably not tuned on 100 million plus child welfare notes so that it knows all the abbreviations and misspellings in ways people refer to concepts in child welfare. So if I search, for instance, drug, I'm going to get back a lot of expected exact matches. This case has a lot of substance abuse references, drugs, but you can also see our system is pulling back kind of conceptually related things that might also be of interest: heroin, OD, heroin overdose. We get tons of usage of this from people when they're writing a report for court and have to go back and say, when was the date I referred mom for X, and how many classes did she go to? You hear people at court getting unexpected questions and being like, I don't know, that occurred before I joined this case, but let me go search it right now in real time. Tons of usage here to just help people make better use of the notes that I think most staff around the country right now think of as being kind of for someone else. They're not for me, the worker, to make use of. Here, we're trying to let workers themselves benefit from the hopefully good documentation that they've amassed over the months working on this case. On the left side of this case, there's a couple other features I'll highlight before switching to the second part of the product. These are all meant to be kind of an overview to give you a sense of what kind of case this is and how that's changed over time. So in this first view, you're seeing all of the risk and protective factors that we noticed in these notes. Each one of them is on its own kind of timeline, if you will, showing you by the radius of that bubble how much of a focus that topic had been at that point in time. So for instance, if I take this first line, it's saying the reason this is up at the top is because substance use has been one of the strongest themes in this case. But you can see it's gotten less focused on over the last quarter or so. So maybe that's progress. Maybe there was just focus elsewhere. If you wanted to see just that line in this case, you can click up on the label, or you can click into specific bubbles and say, what happened here before we went dark on that theme? And you can see, oh, actually, mom was doing pretty well in treatment. Presumably that's why there was focus elsewhere in the last couple of months. So we're trying to both give a kind of 10,000 foot view, thumbnail sketch of what kind of case is this. You're not seeing things here, that this case isn't focusing on sexual abuse, adoption, things that are just not in this list. And the things that are in this list, you can quickly drill into to better understand and drill deeper into. The last thing I'll show here is this people tab. This is doing a very similar thing, but focusing on the people that are mentioned in this case. So I think I showed you in this first note, Henry Patterson. He's listed near the top here, which unsurprisingly, he's the dad. He's mentioned a lot in this case. But you can also see further down lots of people that would be a lot harder to find by just randomly scrolling through notes. There's a stepdad who appears maybe 3 months out of 18, previous caseworkers, judges on earlier hearings. We've done work with clients to kind of compare this to their current systems for the use case of family finding, and found, for instance, that when workers use our system, they're able to find 2 to 3 times as many potential placement opportunities versus in their current system, where honestly, they're basically just kind of going note by note, hoping they find someone mentioned who's an aunt, a cousin, whatever. So again, a very powerful way, if you're new to this case, to figure out who are the core people here, if you will. How do they relate to one another? And then in the next tranche down from that, who are their supports? Who's maybe in the home that I need to worry about? Who could I call on for a emergency placement? Lots of interesting ways to use people information here to better inform casework. There's a bunch more I could show you here, but in the interest of time, I'll do kind of the abbreviated version. I want to flip over and show you the second part of the product now. So I'm going to click this queries link. This part of the product, I'll reintroduce and say, is really focused on providing value to managers in the kind of casework side of an organization, or people in some kind of centralized role like quality improvement or quality assurance. What we're doing here is basically giving you kind of business intelligence capabilities, but where the raw data is in the text. A lot of times we'll talk with, for instance, a policy team at one of our clients, and they'll say, yeah, we would love to investigate that, but we can't, it's in the text. Or you'll hear managers wanting to count and track something, but alas, it's in the text. So what we're trying to do here is give people an ability to say, concept X is important to me. I want to know how we're doing on that today. I want to know which cases are maybe out of compliance with that. I want to be able to see if there's a pattern to that. Does that all fall within one team or one region? And then I want to see how that tracks over time as we try to either maintain strength or improve in some way. That's what this part of the product is doing. Each one of these tiles is a query, and each one is basically reading every single note in real time, as if you had, an infinite number of QI people reading every single case, and then reporting back what I just described: a trend line, a current count, and then an ability to dig in and see actual current matches across your whole agency. If I pick 1 or 2 of these as an example, I think you'll quickly see the capability here. This top right one, sleep safety awareness, is I think a good entry point. Almost all of our child welfare clients, before we came in the door, had some objective around sleep safety. They wanted to make sure that if a case involved an infant, that their staff was talking with the parents about safe sleep and making sure co-sleeping isn't happening, making sure that if the kid's in a crib, there's not, oodles of adorable but unsafe, toys and blankets in there with them. But almost none of those clients of ours had any real tools in their tool belt to to address that. So typically the stance of that agency before we came in would be to have some posters on the wall, to have some mentions of this in new hire training, and maybe at the end of the year to pull 3, 12, 50 cases and review them, and again extrapolate and hope that's representative of how the agency is performing. But at best, that gives you a kind of once a year data point. It doesn't give you an ability to drive improvement. What we're doing is offering the ability to scan all cases for that pattern in real time to see exactly which ones are out of compliance, i.e. need someone to assess that infant's sleeping practices, and offers you the ability to automatically alert workers whose cases are out of compliance. So in this query, for instance, we launched it with one of our clients in the spring. Their entire kind of investment, if you will, of time and energy into that was to send an email at the beginning of the month and basically say, hey, with Augintel's help, we're now going to be monitoring this. This query's live. You might notice it, flagging on your case if you haven't done what you need to do. Then they had us turn it on, and that started generating alerts that would go out to workers, and they would click in and see it and think, I don't want to be on this report. Let me do what I need to do. And often what we saw was the work actually had been happening. The documentation was the missing part. And so the next month they would note, addendum, I did talk with the parents last month. Everything was great, blah, blah, blah. They sent another email in the middle of the month and basically said, just a reminder, we're still watching this. And at the end of that first month, that client had brought their number of out of compliance cases, if you will, cases where there was a not documentation that they did what they needed to do. They brought that number down by about a third, basically for free, having done almost no work other than flipping the switch on our query and then letting workers get alerted where there was an activity that needed to happen. That's the capability we're trying to offer here. That is representative of lots of ways in which our clients aspire to improve the work that they're doing, but maybe lack the managerial tooling to enable them to do that. There's a bunch of other interesting use cases here I'd love to talk through. Maybe I'll highlight this middle one as well. This is an interesting, different one where a lot of our clients also have some team that kind of responds after incidents occur, maybe several teams for different kinds of incidents. This query we built out with one of our clients who was, the person there was tasked with trying to reduce runaways, hospitalizations, and arrests year over year. And we talked with her and she said, I don't really have any tools to do this. It's going to be a stretch to meet the goal that I have. When we talked with her, she said, once my team is called in, usually after the fact, and we read through the notes, we can see, red flags up front. We just don't have a good way to find those proactively. And so we worked with her to build out this query. And what it actually implements is automating a behavioral health assessment that her team has a questionnaire that's like 30 questions. And we said, we have coverage of about 28 of those already. How about if we help you look for those in the text and just flag cases where one or multiple of those occur? We're not predicting anything. We're not putting a score on those kids. We're not suggesting that bad outcome X will happen. We're just helping you automate your intuition. Your experience having done this work is that these things tend to precede the events you're trying to avoid. How about if we help you find those cases sooner so that you can have your team intervene and try to bring that number down? I don't have data to present to you yet on the success of that, but that's, I think, the promise of this part of our product is to help those kinds of teams be more proactive and shift from kind of a, oh crap, let's call Jim's team to come clean this up after the fact, to, hey, I'm seeing some concerning things. Let me call Jim's team to help us avoid whatever type of incident we're focused on. There's a ton of other capabilities here. I think for my last one, I'll just highlight at the bottom. A lot of our clients are also using this part of our product to try to improve quality of their documentation. I have a couple sample queries here that are around looking for copied and pasted, duplicate notes, or looking for very short notes that might just say, child scene, note to follow. We have other clients looking for cases that are maybe month after month not focusing on well-being, which can kind of get shortchanged if there's serious safety concerns. or other kind of fires to put out. That client said, hey, we want to make sure staff are really focusing on educational progress. Show us cases where for like 3 months running, there's no mention of grades, attendance, progress in the educational domain. All of these are areas where our AI can help tremendously, and shift managers, again, back to Joe's kind of last topic, help managers spend less time kind of watching for these issues and more time addressing the issues that do pop up, again, so that they can do what humans are best at, which is helping caseworkers in those challenging cases improve things, rather than spending time reading and watching for issues across these cases. I'm going to pause here and shift back to my slides just for a couple more minutes. I have a couple things to wrap up on here, and then I will pass it back to Patrick to read out any questions that there may be. Okay, we should be back on my slides. I had just a few success stories here I wanted to end with, quotes that we've sort of anonymized from several of our clients that I'll read through to you. Across all roles, I think one of the things we hear the most often is just that using Augintel is a great way to help find information quickly. Sometimes we hear this from caseworkers on their own cases. Often, though, we hear it on others who are popping into a case as an attorney. It's not their case, they don't know it. They need to be able to say, does this case involve X, Y, Z? Oh, it does. Here's the results. But even caseworkers themselves, a lot of times we'll hear them say, like, I know there was some issue around home cleanliness last fall. I don't remember if it was bugs or mice or what month it was, but if a judge asks me, I need to be able to quickly find that, and this is a way that I can do that. This is a case where we heard from a supervisor. They were filling in for one of their staff. A safety plan issue came up, and this manager said Augintel was super useful when doing the work of covering those cases to find past safety plans and whether they worked or not. So just understanding, this isn't some new family. We've tried a few things. They either, they should have learned something about what worked and didn't work, but that supervisor didn't have it top of mind. They needed to quickly find that so that they could make a new plan, and had success doing that with Augintel. The next slide we had here was around fatherhood engagement. So here, pardon me, we had a staff say that they were able to use our product to look at one case and discover that there was actually a second case open that had the same dad on it. I didn't show you the full demo of our case page, but there's a feature there that you're seeing in the middle of this slide that shows you, for the case you're on, any other cases that either currently or in the past had involved the same people. So this worker had used that feature to see that the dad on the current case was active on another case, and could then go understand, has that worker had any more success engaging dad, and bringing him into the case in a productive, constructive way. This was an interesting one. This was a worker that told us there was a case he was working on that he knew well. You can see by the timeline here, it's not like there was a huge amount of history here. It was a relatively new case, had been open a month or two, but he looked at our product and saw the words social migrant listed as a risk factor. We don't mean by putting that in red that we think it's bad. We just mean that presents challenges or risks for that family that should be considered. And this worker said that just seeing that listed out caused him to kind of conceive of the case differently and think harder about the obstacles that family might be facing, the vulnerabilities they may have. And again, they said in the last sentence there, I'm a visual learner, and just seeing them this way helped me see things that I might have overlooked in the case, which is great. That's exactly what we want to be helping workers with. I kind of mentioned this use case already, but attorneys and legal aids, we hear a lot of happiness using our product to prepare for hearings. Again, typically these are workers who weren't managing the case. They may be supporting hundreds of cases at the moment, having a good way to understand the case at a glance. And in this case, understand that there was domestic violence in the case. They were able to write a better, more informed, more comprehensive summary of the family to help that court then make decisions about about the case plan. And then I think secondarily, actually, this was in a different case, pardon me, another case, the attorney mentioned they were able to use it to understand the history of a grandma who came up in a conversation around termination of parental rights and whether or not that person would be a good guardian on the case. I'm going to, I think, skip ahead to the end. We're getting a little short on time. I wanted to leave about 15 or 20 minutes for questions. There's a bunch of other use cases I could highlight. If there aren't any questions, I'll pick these back up. But Patrick, maybe I'll send it back to you to moderate any questions you're seeing. I'll leave this slide up as well if anyone wants to reach out afterwards with more questions. Did we lose Patrick? Maybe we did. Well, let me, in that case, hide my slides, and I'll see if I can dip into the conversation myself here. I see a couple questions. Oh, and I see Alex, my colleague, popping in to address those as well. But nonetheless, I'll go back and read some of these so everyone else can hear them. Becky Olson Hernandez said, do we need to have consistency in naming people across the nodes or across time spans? Yeah, Alex answered this question well. You don't. We're not asking workers to document any differently than they do today. In that demo case that we were looking at, Laverne is misspelled a couple different ways. Ms. Laverne Dobson is the mother. She's misspelled a couple times. She's variously Ms. Dobson or Mrs. Dobson or M, which is a pretty common abbreviation. And the system works just fine to kind of pick those all up. Pardon me 1 second here. The next question we had down from that was, does this product have a security matrix so that users are restricted to those tasks or that information that's part of their work? The answer is yes. We have a variety of ways we can configure our products, and we try to mimic or mirror a given client's security stance. So we see kind of a spectrum of preferences. Sometimes clients of ours will say, everyone should be able to see anything. We trust our staff, but just log it. We want to be able to go back after the fact if we're concerned that Jim was looking at things he shouldn't have to make, to do an audit of that. We can set it up that way. And then we have other clients on the other extreme who say, we can't tolerate that. People should only see what's directly assigned to them or one of their team members, or maybe just the things in their county. We can set it up to kind of mirror a client's perspective. We don't have an opinion about the right way to do that. Oh, I see, Joe. I see your note here. We had a question from Michael Garcia. Does the behavioral health product integrate with My Avatar? Yes, is the short answer to that question. Michael, I could talk with you more about that offline, but we have had a client who was on My Avatar. I'm blanking on the other. There's another NetSmart product that our current client is on that's My something, not My Avatar, a different NetSmart product that we're also integrated with as well. Integrated in the sense that we're able to pull data out of that client, but also integrated in that we're pushing some information back into one of their patient views and able to show information up there as well. I see a question here from Samuel Rice. Will a link be provided? Yes, I believe Lori on our marketing team is recording this and can send out information afterwards. Lori, I don't know if you want to pop something in the chat as to how people request that or if you'll follow up with an email, but we are recording this. We do have slides. We can share some version of this out if you're interested. Maybe if you don't hear from Lori, feel free to reach out to her and she can provide more information there. Any other questions? You're welcome to ask Joe as well if you have questions broader than our focus here at Augintel. Here comes another one. Dylan Jones asked, how does the model receive or obtain feedback? For instance, data on actual events that took place. Imagine there's a manual method. Is there an option to automate data feeds? That's a great question. So we have a couple different ways to provide feedback within our tool. I didn't show you this when I was in the product just for brevity of demo, but anywhere you see a sentence that's tagged in our notes, there's a little tooltip next to them to understand more of what the definition for those tags are. And at the bottom of that is a little link that says, if you think this is wrong, let us know. And you can either leave it at that, which is effectively kind of thumbs downing something, or you can go a step further and actually say, I think the right tag was X, or I don't even see a tag. I would have labeled this as some new concept, X, Y, Z. There's a couple other places in our app you can leave feedback as well. And our data team uses that to periodically retrain our model, rerun it, over all of history, and then thereby kind of improve accuracy continuously. I think you're asking maybe a slightly different version of that question, though, which is to the degree that it's trying to look for precursors of events, like we looked at in that query on kind of pre-incident behavior. That there is a way we can set that up as well, to kind of take structured data that our clients have and use that to train our model to look for things as well. That's probably beyond this. I would need to bring some other slides and maybe bring our head of machine learning to talk more about that. But yes, there are ways we can look at structured data you have on outcomes or on events that are happening in cases and use that to improve the accuracy of our machine learning. Good question, Dylan. Laura Zeilinger, I apologize for mispronouncing your name, asks, are you currently working with human services programs other than child welfare? We are not presently, but we're in talks with a number of other areas of social services. We've been talking most recently, I think the last couple of calls I had were with area, what are they called? Area agencies on aging. There's a couple of those that are interested in using our products. And then we've been looking at some of the ones you mentioned as well. I think one or two that you didn't mention. We've been talking with some potential clients in early intervention. I think there's a ton of applicability of what we're doing to those spaces. I think there's a lot of overlap in the risks and social determinants that are relevant in those spaces. And yeah, if you're interested in applying what we're doing to one of those, definitely reach out. We'd love to have that conversation. And yeah, I think that'd be great to explore together. We'll give people another minute in case someone's typing madly right now. Otherwise, we can wrap up if the questions are winding down.